Good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And tonight I'm smiling because I'm happy that we get to talk once again to David Underdown. David's been on my show. I think this might be the fourth time, if I'm not mistaken. Plus, we've been at charrettes together, and I'm just terrifically excited about having David share what he's been doing because he is one of the most dedicated and dogged researchers that we have. And with his background and his really an interesting angle to things, I really enjoy as well as learn from David every time we get together. So anyway, let's get started. Hey, David, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm actually on Nantucket right now and having a nice vacation with my family. So it's been a great day and excited to be here and feel like I need to live up to Aaron Adler's standards of being the most favorite guest. So I'm gonna hopefully have a good show with you.
Oh, you've already earned that title, so just relax. Um, anyway, that's fantastic that you got a little vacation in there. Nantucket, I've never been there myself. But it sounds idyllic. It also reminds me of the 20s and F. Scott Fitzgerald and all kinds of rum running and you know uh,
Yeah.
illegal stuff going on while everybody's getting drunk and partying. Anyway, you know the picture. Is it true?
Well, it's based the economy here was originally the whaling industry, and believe it or not, one of my friends from college is actually related to Jared Coffin, who was the founder of Nantucket, and so it's it's a beautiful place. I know a lot of people are talking about Barack Obama's 60th birthday on our neighboring island of Martha's Vineyard, but for people that aren't familiar with New England and Massachusetts, Nantucket is just a beautiful landscape. They have the old harbor town with the cobblestone streets and all the old buildings. So it's just a really charming you know place to be, and it's fun to I actually drove here, because I brought my dog, so I rode the ferry and just driving through Ohio and Pennsylvania, and then through Connecticut, and I went to school at BC, so I have a lot of memories of being in New England. But it's always fun to go by because now as I'm building on the stuff I'm trying to learn, with your dad, having the Connecticut history with your family. It's just very interesting, kind of piecing things together. I feel like we have like a weird um, linkage, I guess, like in our family histories that don't like seem like they really connect. But hopefully tonight we'll try to explain some of the connections that seem like they couldn't be, but I really think there are some very interesting, very relevant connections. So wanted to get into that. The history of Loomis and Groton, and then with Harvard and with Yale. So just to talk about some of that stuff with some of those characters. So
Oh, that sounds interesting. Of course, when when we were kids, we would alternate summers. We'd get a week or two in Connecticut and then a week or two down in Georgia to visit my mom's family. But when we were in Connecticut, if we were very lucky, we got to go to Niantic Beach, which was where the O'Loughlins had a beach house, and it was
okay,
just a great place. It was uh, where the O'Loughlin family had a beach house back in the 30s and 40s, and this was after, I guess, after they recovered from the depression, because it was a neat old cottage with I don't know how many floors, because as a kid it seemed like it just went up and up and up, and it had brass beds and feather beds and kind of a high attic where you could they had a telescope there, a little telescope, and you could look out over the horizon and see the ships way out there. As a seven,
yeah,
8 year old, it was really fantastic. And now they've got a nuclear power plant right out there off the beach, and apparently it leaks, and they have to take iodide and stuff if they live there. It's just a tragedy to think of it. I actually drove by there once just to see it, and I was really kind of heartbroken that they built that plant right out there. There's a big rock out there in that little harbor area, and my great grandfather used to swim out and go around the rock and come back, and that's where my father learned how to be a swimmer. And so my father was really an excellent swimmer that did the same thing. That's uh that's some old O'Loughlin territory in Connecticut for you.
Probably aimed him towards the Navy.
Oh yeah, yeah, and more than that, I mean, to flesh that out, in the cottage itself, in the house itself, there was a one of those low bookshelves below the windows as you could look out on the street, and in those bookshelves were the Horatio Hornblower books. And this is C.S. Foster writing tales about this heroic British guy that becomes takes him from midshipman up until finally he becomes an admiral. But the first couple of the books were written just as World War II was getting started. And these are actually just exactly what you say. They are there to mold a person's character towards being Horatio Hornblower, and to take on that stiff upper lip British. We never say die. We're the good guys, And so I think that when he was, say, maybe 16, 17 years old, to have been exposed to those books is also part of him being romanced into the Navy as a career
Mm-hmm.
as the war developed real. So yeah, that part of it too. Yeah, Hornblower was written by C.S. Foster, who I learned a couple years ago was, guess what, a British intelligence agent.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's a lot of the Ivy League has a lot of roots in with the British intelligence. So it's part of the history of it. I don't. That's going through like with your dad at Loomis with his one of the people that I didn't really know. Like I've heard I know we've gotten into the Bechtel and the McCone memo being so key with uh, with Lee Harvey Oswald. The element that I didn't understand within the Bechtel world was that the Edgar Kaiser was the partner, and I didn't know I didn't make the connection until just a couple of weeks ago that the Kaiser family moved to Barton Hills, actually to the area that my great grandfather subdivided, and they actually lived on Underdown Road in Barton Hills. The son was known for having these big extravagant parties. They'd bought the Willow Run plant in Ypsilanti, which had been I took we went with George there, and we were sort of learning the history of how Henry Ford was building these B-24s, and of course the B-24 was the plane that then ends up in Dallas and then becomes the fighter jet. So there's that connection. But as far as the Kaiser, if I didn't get that they were in the Detroit market. And again with the name, with that name, with the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. Well, we got to settle. With the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, it's been something that I hadn't really put those things together, because again, like with my dad's family, everyone died kind of young and mysteriously, and so I didn't I hadn't put those together. But as far as with Battelle, with George Schultz and your dad, that was something that I didn't know that they were doing all of the pipelines for Standard Oil. Basically, that was their big project, was doing the pipelining in California, and then of course they got into doing the Middle Eastern pipelines. So that, ties into the overthrows in the Middle East in the 50s, and then also getting into the Aramco. Let me grab. Sorry, I got an anxious dog here. But the 6 companies was something that I didn't know about, the Hoover Dam super project builders. And if Andy could pull that up.
I just want to say, dog treats always help in these situations.
I know. Let me grab it.
I have my Toto, and when Toto's in the room with me, yeah.
He was locked up for dinner, and I had about 2 minutes to give him a walk before, and it's not enough, so he's a little bit anxious. But
can I see him for a second? Hey, buddy. Oh, what a beautiful boy, huh?
Yep, he is a beautiful Italian Legato Romagnola. So he's a truffle hunting dog, and he is normally just as sweet as can be, but he definitely is wanting attention right now and food. So we'll keep giving him some treats. But yeah.
Okay, thanks for letting him come on camera. He's quite a gorgeous dog.
He's a great dog, but I just don't want to have him throw up, barking in the background for everybody.
Well, anyway, you were talking about Bechtel, and of course that's where George P. Schultz ends up among all of his other positions, but that certainly is where the core of his career is, and that's where he made a whole lot of money, I'm quite sure.
Right.
George P. Schultz died earlier this year, I think. Maybe it was, if I recall, maybe 6 or 8 months ago. And I never spoke to him. I never got in touch with him. I started learning about who he was and what he did, and I started realizing that yeah, it probably wouldn't be any point in trying to talk to him. If he'd wanted to have a relationship with us, he would have gotten in touch with us when my dad died, and he didn't, and so there you go.
Yeah. Well, he's an interesting character as far as the his relationship within the public and private sector. He, of course, was very involved with when we talk about these pipelines in Saudi Arabia, sort of understanding I've been trying to really learn about the history of sort of the World Wildlife Fund and then the Safari Club, and how that was tying into the BCCI banking, but also how that group was also negotiating the petrodollar system at Bretton Woods, and how I'm trying to think, who was it yesterday on your show where they were talking about somebody was Treasury Secretary that didn't. It was Conley that was the Treasury Secretary, but he was really a lawyer, really understand the financial aspects, as well as like the George Schultz and probably the Keys and Kissinger and those guys that were also negotiating that. But as far as the if you look up the petrodollar recycling and and sort of the petrodollar warfare, that explains how that deal was sort of designed, where all oil trades would clear in dollars. They'd get rid of the gold standard, and there basically would be military protection for the Saudis, and that that was sort of the arrangement that I think they really I think what they wanted to do was have a they wanted to use an energy source as the asset backing the currency, as opposed to using a metal. And I think they're doing the exact same thing now. I think, and again, it's the same characters. If you get into the N Nuclear Threat Reduction Agency, I believe, the NTI, and that's also that's Sam Nunn and Henry Kissinger. It was George Schultz. And they were basically, I think laying the tracks for where we are now, as far as the track and trace. A lot of what they were talking about was providing security, and also the ability to monitor the different nuclear threats, but also any kind of other attacks that may emerge. Obviously with the post 9/11, I feel like we had the like when I lived in New York, the anthrax was something that was affected everybody. I mean, there was a lot of concern getting on the subways, and then as far as like buildings were being evacuated every day, it was just like very tense time to be there. And sort of learning the history of the anthrax has been again, like a lot of the manufacturers of it, was that Vigo plant in Terre Haute, Indiana, and then also in Scotland. They were the Porton Down was doing the anthrax also there, and then George had also covered recently the vaccination program for the anthrax was done out of the Emergent Biosolutions out of Lansing, Michigan, which was another connection that obviously in Michigan, me being from Michigan and everything, my mom went to Michigan State, so I feel like I have some connections to East Lansing, and that's where that's all based. And so that's something that I do think is a key element, as we're seeing now that they're basically offering World Bank loans is based on medical stockpiles and things like that. So again, they're trying to get away from hard assets, I feel like, and sort of shifting it towards a sort of a medicine and a public health type economy. It's like service economy is really where they're going, and it's it's scary because I do you talk to the LaRouche people and the Schiller people, and I'm somebody that does believe in having the the infrastructure that I mean, you always wish that they could just do it once and do it right and have it last, but it doesn't seem like it ever works out that way.
Yeah, it's always asphalt and never macadam, you know.
And there
When they do the roads, I mean, why can't they just do the roads once, instead of having to have the asphalt crew come through every 3 years? Well, because the asphalt crew guys like to get paid, and it's part of life.
part of life, and that's actually was Edgar Kaiser was the main one that was doing all those asphalt roads. That was his
That's
yeah, they were doing the oil pipelines, but I think they were underneath that asphalt. I think they were throwing in the pipelines as well. Um, so that was an interesting thing. Somebody sent a picture of the um, what's the out in California. Professor Hamamoto's talked about it. It's the oh my gosh, I can't think of it right now. But there's a picture of all the Bechtel family, and then the Kaisers, and they had the Henry Kissinger and John McCone and George Shultz, and they're all at this Bohemian Grove, and that also ties to the whole what we were talking about with as far as like the building of Stanford being a model. Like they used Cornell as the model, but a lot of the characters in that are the same. Bechtel was a California company, and the Kaiser end of it was in Oakland, California. So a lot of this history with the San Francisco port and everything, it is that family. So it's just something that, again, it's like you go through that 6 companies, and it's just crazy because like the Bechtel and Kaiser's the first one, and then you've got the Knutson in there, and that was the my dad was a classmate of Sid Knutson, whose dad was Seaman Knutson, who was the he was the CEO of General Motors and also Ford, and he did a lot of work with Albert Kahn, who's a Detroit. Kahn is also one of the 6 companies, and so he did a lot of the like the Willow Run plant. They did like a lot of the strategic airlift and the missile defense sites, I think, were done by these same companies. As time went on, they were like the original infrastructure builders.
Do you have you looked to see, is there a relationship between the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, which was very much Rockefeller funded in Germany, in Munich, and the Kaiser family in California? Is there a connection there?
See, I think there has to be, just based on the history of the German assets and sort of how they got split. And we talk about paperclip and how they took a lot of the IG Farben assets. I mean, one of the things I've really been trying to learn is the banking relationships, as far as the key banks that were financing a lot of this stuff. Because again, it's a lot of the same um, American groups that are that did the infrastructure, and the big factories for the war factories were done by these same groups. And they modeled and like as far as the Russian build out, that was Albert Kahn was the firm with Samuel Braun that was Argo, and they were basically they had the exclusive ability to trade with Russia. And they Albert Kahn went and built 600 factories. He did the 5 and the 10-year plans for Stalin, as far as like the industrialization of Russia. And and there are a lot of factories in Detroit that are from Kahn. The thing that I always thought of again was that the Cranbrook House was Albert Kahn, and that was, of course, my dad's other friend that he went to Gow School with was Peter Booth, and his grandparents were the founders of Cranbrook, and they're a Scripps and a Booth. And again, that's another name that we've been going out and looking at the Scripps. And then as far as the Salk lab, I mean, that was another Ann Arbor connection, because going back to the so that's the Edsel Ford House. So that's actually that is in Grosse Pointe, and that's another very interesting house too, as far as Edsel, because he was the one that commissioned the Rivera mural at the Detroit Institute of Art, and that was mostly featured the River Rouge Ford plant, which was the largest manufacturing facility in the world. But it also had a connection with the Park Davis, which was the pharmaceutical company in Detroit, which was one of the was the original. They were the first pharmaceutical company that mass produced medicine, and so that was a big deal. So Diego Rivera was very interested in these these super factories, and he captured it in the mural. And then he, of course, goes from Detroit to New York and does the project for the Rockefeller Center after, and that was John D. Jr. that commissioned him for that project. So he went from Edsel Ford to New York to do the 30 Rock. So there's Park Davis. Yeah. So Park Davis is another tie with the Park Davis is if you look, when we were talking about the Gibson Island with the science conventions, the man that organized those was Dr. Neil Gordon, and he was initially was at Wayne State, which is in downtown Detroit, and he set up what was called the Kresge Hooker Library at Wayne State University, and his advisor was the chief chemist of Park Davis. And when Neil Gordon would go to the Gibson Island, he would stay at Stuart Symington's home, which Symington also has interesting connections with my mom's side, because my grandpa was an RCA engineer, and I really do believe that he was somebody that worked on the proximity fuse. I think I mean, I know that the Bloomington RCA, it is recorded in newspapers that they were the one that, that it was a super project like the Manhattan Project. And actually, I didn't realize with the Rosenbergs, it was actually the proximity fuse design that was passed by Rosenberg, and it makes me wonder if it was to Lee Harvey Oswald, because the U2 was the project that Oswald was a radar specialist for, and he worked in Minsk on the radar for the U2, and also in Japan, and is it Atsugi, I believe is the name. And I believe the proximity fuse was the device that supposedly shot down the U2, but the Emerson Electric that Symington was the chairman of the board of, that was the company that manufactured most of the proximity fuses, and it also so that was
Well, let me just jump in and make sure we all understand what is a proximity fuse, and why was it such a big secret? And this has to do with rockets, I think. You tell us.
so basically with with munitions and with, like, the artillery pieces, the problem was getting it to detonate at the right place, and so the people that would operate the cannons would have to use geometry to to aim, and basically what the proximity fuse was it used radio and radar as basically as like a depth finder, so it could measure, could bounce the sound waves off the ground, and you could set it as a timer, so it would blow up at the right place at the right time. And basically they said that you want the munition to explode above the target and not hit the ground, or not to explode at all. So basically what it did was it made and I think it was I forget who it was in the Pacific Theater. They got it at the very end of World War II, I believe, was when they first used it. And they said what used to take like 1,000 rounds would take two, because it was so accurate. And and part of the reason also why I really have my suspicions about my grandpa working on this was the backstory for this device was that it was Hedy Lamarr, the most beautiful woman in the world, who was dating Howard Hughes, and she was attending these parties with the different military guys, and she decided, she was a piano player, and so she discovered frequency hopping by going from the white keys to the black keys on the piano, and she worked with a guy that did screenplays for movies and shows and stuff like that. And of course my grandpa was somebody that worked at RCA, and before that he worked at a company called Potter and Brumfield, and that was in Princeton, Indiana, and they were the relay king of the world. And a relay is is like a switch that to me is something that if you're somebody that's doing relays and timers, and he did like Potter and Brumfield did like the first school bell and stuff like that, like so again, like, this is all stuff that's sends signals, and it's as far as like munitions and things like that, I feel like they're that's sort of the legacy that it would go through. Plus it became the AMF Atomic eventually buys it, which was a big Manhattan company vendor. So there was that. And then the other part of the story that I really I know that there was one of my grandpa's coworkers was a man named Sarkis Tarzan, who was he was a Turk, and he is has a lot of history as far as his broadcast. The different they made the color TVs, but he also was making proximity fuses and other devices like that. My grandpa was it was like a big family crisis whether he would work for him or not. And he decided to stay at RCA because they had the benefits and everything, and he had the young family. But the other thing that was the connection was the the head of the music school for IU moved from Harvard and MIT in 1949 to be my grandpa's roommate for 1 year, and that was Willie Oppel. And he had come from this background. He'd written the Harvard Encyclopedia of Keyboard. He wrote all these texts that are still to this day used. So again, it's the idea that you know, with that, kind of that odd connection with Symington. The guy that fixed my parents up was that chemist that his last name was Marker, and my mom's good friend from college married the son, who died really young too. He was like 25 and he died, which was always kind of an odd backstory, because his he was a Michigan. He was a Michigan State. He was in the Psi U, which was sort of like the top fraternity at Michigan State. And his fraternity brothers were George Romney's son, Scott, whose daughter is now the RNC chief, was a fraternity brother. And then also the another governor of Michigan, Milliken, he was also in there. So there are these kind of characters that also tie back, again to Cranbrook, because the Romneys were all Cranbrook family. And again, with my dad's friend Peter, obviously being in that family, that's always been sort of an interesting connection. And then my dad actually went to high school with Rana, the wife too. So and again, and it's hard for me because I've never met any of these people, even though they lived in the same neighborhood. I never knew them. Seaman Knutson used to come into the dry cleaner when I worked there in the middle school, and he was just always a nice older guy, but I had no idea that he was the that when Henry Ford II fired him, it was Bunky's History was the headline everywhere in the world. And you just don't, I don't know, I mean, that happens quite a bit, I guess, with as far as the people that I've known from Detroit. Nobody has ever alluded to any of these connections, but I one of my really good friends was his middle name's Harrison, his last name's Williams, and and I really think that his family is going to tie back to the that Berkeley plantation that we were talking about, because again, my mom's family is all from Indiana, and that was where the Harrisons were in Vincennes. And if you go, I didn't know about the Berkeley plantation, that being sort of their plantation. And if you tie that back to England, there's a lot of really interesting connections to the English version of that Lord Berkeley. I'm trying to think. It was I believe the Sir Francis Drake was in that family. So there's sort of this history of I mean pirates. I mean it would be privateering, but that's something that I didn't. I guess is when we got into a lot of the JFK stuff with the bird and sort of the King Carter and the birds, and sort of got into sort of that old Virginia, kind of thing. It's hard to put that together. I feel you need to really, I'm very grateful that you're reading those, how, the stories sort of those periods. You can kind of learn the different groups, because that's what's so hard for me, is I feel you don't know which group goes with which one, and they just, they make it confusing. So it's, to try to piece it together as far as the, because I do feel that old Virginia company group is, they're still a very important group. And so you got the Bird Uranium there, and now you've got your the Civil Air Transport was also started by Bird, which Lee Harvey Oswald was a trainee, and then also David Ferry was the trainer of that program. So you had that connection. And then with Eastern Airlines was also, David Ferry was an Eastern Airline pilot, which was General Motors airline originally too. So again, you could get back to the old GM stuff, because they're also, the Sloan Kettering is also General Motors hospital before it was Sloan Kettering. So all this, all these different things as far as like connecting to Detroit. It's it's been, it's it's just hard because I feel like my like trying to put this together. I feel like the connections are so close, but it just seems so abstract too, because like I feel like I know so many of the characters, and like I feel like if I asked them about it or talked to them about it, like most of them would be out of the loop of it, and would not really follow along at all. Like even talking to my own family, like they have very little background in a lot of this, stuff, and it just is confusing. And I do feel like um, struggle to communicate it, because I do feel like it's, I kind of skip all over to different eras and stuff like that. But I'm, trying to piece it together so we can at least, get to the stuff we're talking about now, as far as like where we are with the with the government coming out and basically just saying that the Lee Harvey fishmonger story is been disproven. So
Yeah, isn't it interesting? And that is George Webb's work. There's no question about it. And basically the books that he's written are now getting read by congressional staffers and people in Congress, and he's making a huge difference. So bravo to George, and be sure and get copies of his books from Neighborhood News Studio while you can. They can only make so many of them, and you can get a signed copy. Most of them, I think, are like $30, but it's also a great way to help them pay the rent, pay the bills at the studio there. So definitely want everybody to support the work that George Webb has done for, he's like 6 years now. I know I've been following around with him for like four or so, and you know,
yeah,
even George, after a while, he needs some support. So make sure and help him out.
yeah. Well, I was, I have to say I'm very grateful for George, because I do, he's the he gives so much information, and I feel like he gave me a lot of confidence when I told him I was going to sort of focus on the energy and the logistics network for it. He thought that was like a really good approach, and to have somebody like George, that was very very nice for me to have that, because I really just feel like he is so just he knows so much, and I just obviously want to just try to help get that the stories out as best we can, because I mean I feel like they're so important. And even though when we were on the charrette, and I felt like all this stuff was happening so fast, and um in retrospect, I feel like we did did a great job as a group, really you know focusing on the right characters, and you know a lot of the cover story, I felt like we were immediately skeptical of the bat story and the wet market, and that. And again, it's like it's hard to be persuasive if that still is the sort of the official accepted narrative, or the idea that it's just undiscoverable, and we just have to just move on to the treatment and not worry about the origin or like prevention of it, something like similar in the future. So all these things are just, to me, are very basic, because it's just using scientific just using logic, and it's so it's very hard when it's um the way a lot of stuff is framed, because I do feel like it's a lot of false choice, where they offer you two bad choices and they make you feel like you have to choose one of them. And a lot of times I feel like you don't need to do that, but again, like if every media source is in concert, saying that Andrew Cuomo is you know leading the helping everybody understand what's going on, and writes books and wins awards and stuff, like it's hard to go against that. It's very powerful, and you look, it's hard to, with no credibility, no national credibility, to challenge that, even though it seems like just basic logic, it's not persuasive. It is, so it's hard to go against that. And I feel like we're fighting it. You know, and I hope it gets traction. I really do. You know, because it's very, you know, I have to say that in my own family it's very hard because, you know, it's um I'm you know, I'm somebody that's just like, I feel like the medicine is an unknown, and it's just that makes me uncomfortable, and my whole family has taken it, you know, and so, you know, that's something where I feel like I was very ineffective in being even persuasive enough to get them to, you know, I was always just like, you know, if you don't feel good, then see the doctor and do something. Like, you don't need a you know, to take medicine when you don't have a symptom. And to me, like, I'm also somebody that's rarely gotten sick in my life, and you know, so I don't, you know, so I feel like that was my experience. But you know, it was just really sad for me because I do feel like we've really tried to uncover a lot of the roots of where these medical programs come from, and so it's very sad for me to think that you know, that I wasn't able to at least get them to even, you know, pump the brakes at all. You know, very sad for me. But you know, you just have to hope that it's, you know, that it is helpful. And you know, like I said, I don't think that you can really know at this point. You know, and it's so, you know, but it is something where, you know, traveling now, you know, the rules are different, like here in Massachusetts, and people are um, you know, it's just disruptive to everybody's lives, and I feel like people are really exhausted. And you know, I feel like that's the plan, is to get everybody just to be, you know, just exhausted and compliant.
Yeah, it's my wife and I were talking this evening at dinner and about how it just feels like it's chilling. It's like I feel like something like a dark cloud and it's coming over us, and it's going to be a difficult time ahead because people are getting agitated to get angry at people that are on that have made a different choice. You know,
Right.
if you and this anger can is being pumped up by we have a governor here, Governor Larry Hogan, who is he's a Republican, but he's not really a an individual rights Republican. He's more of a business Republican and more of a very, very compliant with the deep state Republican. So he's like a rhino, I guess, is what they call him.
Right.
And, but because Maryland is basically a Democratic voting state, with Baltimore, there's that's the whole state. Um, and with a Republican governor, both the Democrats and the Republican leadership are pro, mandatory.
Right.
They're willing to go all the way and force everyone. And so there's really only just some libertarians and a few open-minded progressive Democrats, but we really are getting crowded out. And the another point I wanted to just get your thoughts on is what I was talking with Harley Schlanger about the idea that we've been under a psychological warfare technique from since World War II or even before it, uh, with things like soap operas and things like just the dumbing down of culture, and the attraction of people away from their own lives and to follow somebody else's lives, and this contributes to what I think is the real problem, and that is that people are more interested in pleasing others than they are in following their own conscience. And you're a person that I know is like me, and that is that somehow, luckily, we had enough good parenting and good upbringing that we have a strong sense of conscience, and we're going to make decisions based upon whether they make sense to us and not based upon whether you think you're going to get good credit from your friends because you did something.
Right.
But they've been shaping a society in which people pleasing is the goal. The That is, I think, one of the tragic results of mass media, mass television, and the manipulation, because we know they can manipulate it. I mean, Goebbels said it. Walter Lippmann, uh, Bernays. It's clear that they have scientifically figured out how to manipulate large groups of people and how they think, and now they use that against us, and we're like we don't have any defenses. I'd like to hear your comment on that.
Well, I mean, I think um, I think one of the challenges for me is that I've always been sort of I guess, I mean, I went to a school that was very structured, and it really it had very strict rules. And to me, the my great critique is the I'm always somebody that wants to understand the rules, how the game's played, what we're talking about. And the big problem I always have is when my observed experience is different than the way that people tell, they explain the way the rules are. And I feel like that's the biggest problem, especially within the pandemic environment, because you have each state that sort of has different rules, they change. Then you have like an international figure like a Dr. Fauci that has, it seems to have a different advice, depending on the situation. And so it's just the uncertainty of, because I think you're right. I mean, I think that most people are people pleasers. I mean, like in my own family, absolutely. I mean, most people avoid conflict. And so being able to, be compliant, feel like you're, a good part of your community, a good family member, a good, is critically important to most people. I mean, that's like what most, I mean, when you talk about these psychological operations and getting into the psychology, I mean, I've always really been interested in that stuff. And I do think that, for the vast majority of people, I do think that sort of your reputation in your community is the number one drive for you. I think most people want to, be, thought of well, amongst their family and their friends, and that's something that they really will adapt themselves to what they feel like is will get that result in the best way. So that but I do like the psychology, because I think there are different people as far as the getting into like the Freud, as far as like you'd like the alpha personality versus a beta or like a sigma personality. I do think that is true, that there's different sort of temperaments for different people. So, when you try to get somebody that's, like an alpha personality and they're not allowed to be in that role, I think you can get conflict. Or if somebody that's a beta, which is to me somebody that just wants to feel like they're supporting the right team and part of the right group. And that's, um, you know, uh, it has the right group has to be has to be offered. And again, like when the rules are changing, or things are changing all the time, it's hard to really have a good footing, and then everybody's sort of always disoriented, which is that's the program. I mean, you've read the Phoenix program, and the sort of the idea of using terror. I mean, as sad as it is to say that, that's what it is. It's just scaring people into action. And when it's scary to think that that's what the program is here. But I think that it is. There's so much that is just completely doesn't make any sense at all, as far as the election stuff is very that's hard to really trust that that's uh, a system that that can be examined or reviewed, that people would have confidence in it. I mean, it's the fact that the leaders don't even put that as the front of the line, as far as like just building confidence in the system for people. I mean, that's the most important thing, is that people think that and then to not have that, to not address that, to say that you're a bad person, or a dangerous person if you don't just go along with it. I mean, it's to me it's very threatening. And Bo doesn't like it, and I don't. um but but there is, as far as the PR stuff, I mean, it's very hard to fight it. I mean, they've really just spent, there's so much, there's just so much out there that you're fighting against, and it's just like, because there's so much information and so many perspectives, I feel like, someone like a voice like a George, who I feel like is such a great voice that, everyone should be listening to, gets, just kind of flooded in with many others. And, then you get the, you get the resistance as far as like the platforms, not seemingly having like a fair system as far as like what the rules are. And, I don't know. I mean, it's just like it creates a lot of confusion, and it's hard to really trust anything. So I mean, those are all things that, obviously I you know very, it's very upsetting to me. I mean, I look at like, just like being around my nephew who's 6 years old, and like I feel like I can't, tell him like, if you work hard and do good in school, blah blah blah, like it's going to work out for you. Like it's, like that's, I mean, I mean, that I think that's real for a lot of people, for a lot of people, and that's their life. But I feel like, as far as, that's not really the way of the world. So, and to not, and to me, like, I feel like I can analyze things really well, but because there's so much resistance to, to having sort of an easy to understand narrative, like, I mean, even going, even the JFK, I mean, we had a president assassinated, like, in front of the world. And the result of it is just, I mean, the Warren report it's just crazy to think that it's, that we still, even now, will have a former CIA director go on TV and say it's the, it's a magic bullet theory. He's right, single shooter. And, it's just so again, that's the top of the heap as far as the intelligence for our country. So if that's the character that says that, then, who am I to, say that, that I think Duncan Lee could be Lee Harvey Oswald's dad or uncle or something. That's something that I would love to discuss with you. Are you familiar with him, Duncan Lee? He was
No.
he was Wild Bill Donovan's private secretary. And he
Really?
was in Verona in Silver Master files. He was Cook, Koch, and he was he became the lawyer, the chief counsel for AIG, which was the Cornelius van der Star, and then becomes
Yeah.
the Greenberg stuff. But he was Duncan Lee, and if you look in the the Silver Master files, if you Google that one, he was they said that he was a distant relative of General Robert E. Lee. And if you look up Robert E. Lee Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald's dad, he also is credited with being a distant cousin. So with Oswald having these, the McCone memo linkages as far as being in, the U2 was one of the most top secret programs that we had. I mean, we've gone over. I mean, it's like it was a sub project even within the government. I mean, they were trying to hide it, I feel like, even from guys like your dad, right? So, I mean, it was a very, secretive program that Oswald is involved in. So how does he get into that position? How does he get to be living with Ruth Payne, whose husband is running Bell Helicopter, but is she a Payne, like a Standard Oil Payne also? I mean, we know de Mohrenschildt is the Russian energy scout for the Noble and for the Rothschilds. So he's using Lee Harvey Oswald. So is Oswald is this AIG chief counsel, who we know they were the partner of Chiang Kai-shek, that set up the Flying Tigers, that did the whole, and I know that you have a your family has a connection to that. But I do think that is something that hopefully people will think about. I think that is a possibility, because again, like, Lee Harvey Oswald is not, the story of him just being sort of the loner, guy is not correct. And so, I don't know if he looks that much like him, but it's very interesting because he was Donovan's, private secretary in the OSS and everything. So he's going to have all those connections with, Donovan was very connected to the Harrimans. He It was Rumsey married Harriman's sister in Buffalo. It was that C.C. Rumsey, and the Rumsey family was like a big Buffalo. I think they were maybe the auto company. I have to look it up. But he was the lawyer for the Harrimans, and then he was the law school classmate of FDR. So to put this Duncan Lee in with him, he's going to be, and with that Robert E. Lee connection, and then of course with Byrd having the connection to not only to that Virginia company, but also he was born in Detroit, Texas, which stuck out to me because that was also where the Cactus Jack. I'm trying to think. He was the first. He was the vice president for FDR. He was also from Detroit, Texas, which always was a place that just stuck out to me. Like, I'd never heard of it before, and obviously being from the Detroit area, that was another thing where you feel like there's got to be deep roots there. As far, I mean, how many people are become basically the vice president of the United States, and then the other person runs the Byrd Oil and Uranium and owns the school book depository and has a cousin that's doing the Antarctic trips and everything. So yeah, there he is.
Oh,
John Nance Garner.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's from
I've seen his
Detroit,
name, but I've never studied him.
Yeah, and he's because when you get into all that Texas and the old, like the Texas oilman kind of thing, that's when you're getting into the the LBJ and the Bobby Baker, and then you've got the Richardsons and the Murchisons, and those sort of groups, and those guys are all interesting because I feel like they connect deeply to J. Edgar Hoover, right? Because they're hosting Hoover at their Texas ranches, and also they have the what is it, Del Charo, the La Jolla hotel that I think Murchison owned, that was sort of the hangout for all the gangsters, and where Hoover liked to hang out and everything. So all those that's the Suite 8F. It's also the Kellogg Root and Brown, which was like Bechtel, was also a super builder that did a lot of a lot of projects that were obviously LBJ had a big hand in directing some of that stuff once he became president.
Well, I hate to do this, but I guess I promised Bo I would let you go at 9 o'clock, and Bo says, "Hey, we had a deal."
Right. He has got it hit. He's ready to hit the road. I have to say, I wish he's normally like a great, like very like
Yeah.
sweet, but he is.
Thank you, Bo, for being so patient with us tonight. You're a good boy.
Yeah. So.
All right, David Underdown, the next George Webb squared. I like that. Very nice to have you back. And boy, I just wanted to keep on going all night, but we'll have to end it here. David Underdown, we'll see you on Twitter, and just very glad that you're following my readings. The How the Nation Was Won, I think, does help us get through that 1700s. From 1640 to 1750 is a very, very obscure time, but through reading this book, we're seeing that it's a formative time, and a time of great battles between people like the Byrds and people like Benjamin Franklin.
That's
All right.
And then my Key family is supposed to be related to Francis Scott Key. So that's another intrigue. That's
You have Key.
My mom is a Key. So my grandpa is Charles Wesley Key, and my grandma is Helen Imogene McClure Pauley. So
You should have told me this when you were down here at Mystery Island, because the ancestral home of the Key family is right across the Wicomico River. You can see it from here,
yeah,
and it's right there at Bushwood.
and the thing that's the Bushwood is funny too, because that was I um I have my suspicions that Bushwood Country Club from Caddyshack was named after the Barton Hills Country Club. Based on Ann Arbor having this, the Weather Underground history, and like a lot of theatrical things. I don't know, the Dow's Alex Dow, who was the head of Detroit Edison. He's historically interesting because he employed Henry Ford and also introduced Ford and Edison, and that for the meeting when they decided that petroleum would be the fuel for the auto. Um, he had a home that was not Bushwood; it was Brushwood, but they had the Alexander McKinsey golf course, who of course is the famous golf course architect, and then like the McKinsey history is interesting with the whole fur trade on the St. Lawrence Seaway. There are a lot of McKinseys or McAllisters, or I'm sorry, yeah, it was Alexander let's see, I have it right? Yeah, it's McKinsey. Yeah, Alexander McKinsey. But I always thought that because the Kaiser son was famous for throwing these huge blowout parties in Barton Hills with all the lights and all that stuff, and again with my there's just a lot of weird. Again, it's hard to explain all the things because my great grandpa was the one that died in 1930 that got run over by the car, and you know my my grandpa had to go to the Trudeau sanitarium and live in an iron lung, so I have like all these very like terrible things like when I think about all those things, because again, like everyone was gone like way before, and then like on my mom's side, Indiana, it's all like you know got hit in the head by a meteor in the field, or whatever, like all these like crazy stories of the family, that and again, like the Pauly name is one that was very I didn't know the Edwin Pauly was the oil partner with the Zapata. He was doing Zapata. He was with Joe Kennedy and Prescott. And that's the Pauly Pavilion. The UCLA basketball was named after the Pauly that was from Indianapolis. But of course, like when I asked my mom, like, did you ever hear about a Pauly? And she's like, I would have heard about a Pauly that we were related to, but we are supposed to be related to Jane Pauly, who was an IU, girl. So who knows?
Well, the only thing I can add is that the Con- Congressional Country Club, which is also one of the
I know.
highfalutin country clubs, is a place where
And,
they
right.
supposedly practiced their grenade attacks during World War II, throwing grenades at the.
Well,
So maybe that had something to do with Caddyshack too.
Well, another one that I just learned was the Spencer repeater rifle, which was a Colt and Remington product. They said that they went in and to the White House with the repeater, and they walked right into Abe Lincoln's office, and then they went out to the mall to do some target practice or whatever to show off the new repeater rifle. So that was one that was interesting too, because my McClure relative was in the Indiana Civil War Brigade with Colonel Eli Lilly. So I have, again, like not only the Park Davis, but also these Eli Lilly connections, because like my grandma's best friend was like the Lilly librarian in Bloomington and stuff like that. And then like that, all the Lilly kids went to a school called Park Tudor in Indianapolis, and we have like people we know that have been there. So there's a lot of odd connections on that stuff too.
George Webb, welcome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, David. Hey, John. We've been just here in Michigan doing a watch party of you guys, and And say hi to Bo for me. Everybody loves Bo.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna let Bo take care of business.
I feel so bad, but
Yeah.
I just want to say, Dave, as always, an incredible show, and John, incredible. And I just want to say there was a very poignant moment there about 2-3 minutes where you were describing the great research that you did along with a group, and we had no malice whatsoever. We were just looking at all these huge level NATO connections, and how could all these Bon Jovis be so high up in NATO? And how could they all be getting all the coronavirus bids? And how could they be involved in predicting what the next vaccine and the next virus? And I just want to say this to David's heart right now. There is not any human being in this earth that had less of an agenda than David Underdown in just trying to pull information together and understand what was happening to our world. And that is the truth. And I just want to tell his family, because I know how hard this has been on his family and his nephew and the relationship of his whole family. He has sacrificed so much, and all he did was his incredible dot connection, and it all happened over a period of like 10 minutes, because he has this incredible ability to put all these things together, like you just saw tonight, with the there's connections. And I always listen to Dave and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that. But he did this analysis in 10 minutes of all these top level NATO people. And he said, how could this be? How could this be? This, and this? How could 18 different Bon Jovis be involved in the coronavirus bidding? And he has taken so much heat. And I just want to say he is such a wonderful soul that only was interested in truth. And that's all I want to say for Dave tonight. He has no Bo. He has no agenda. He has no agenda. He just was interested in truth.
All right.
Yeah. Well, and also, it is upset. I have to say that, like, when with the new format, the trolls, they're effective. I mean, they're very disruptive, but it's also very disheartening to feel like there are people impersonating you and trying to represent what you're saying. And again, like with this stuff, it's it's very personal. It's very, it's very it's very serious. But just I don't know. I have it's very upsetting, because I've always felt like that is something that is, that will, happen, where somebody will, post things and, misrepresent who you are, or like what you say. Cause I know, like, for me, like I get, when I post stuff, like sometimes, I kind of go a little too extreme, and people could probably leverage off that to make it really bad. And I do try to have like a line where I don't really get too over the top, but I always worry about that people will misrepresent. And I do feel like, because that this is obviously a very serious situation, and we've got the the different lawsuits and things like that. Like, I just don't want to do. I've never been the one that wants to like screw it up for anybody. And I feel like the stories are so important. And again, like with even like just listening to the interview that you had with the woman that called in, that, like, I feel like that's like, that was sort of fishing for almost to compound on like saying something negative, which again, like I never was in. To me, it was always like we were just looking, just trying to figure out who would have been in a position, like physically been somewhere where where they could have been somebody that was infected. And we never, I mean, because I know that there's the idea that there's stalking and threats, and like that can be, to me, that can be easily mimicked, and hard. And again, like I don't like you said, like I am not just trying to figure out trying to figure out what's going on, and to have to sort of learning the system where they can use foreign reporters that don't need to follow the same rules as somebody from here. I mean, it's very upsetting to me, but that's the system we have, and I'm hopeful. I feel like you're doing a great job, everything that you say as far as like the lawsuit and stuff, but I really do, that stuff does, I am, I've gone through with you, like as far as stuff that's happened with people around me and stuff, and it's scary, and I have to say that I am nervous, with what will happen in the future, I guess, but it is I do feel like the group did such a good job. I mean, just like looking back, I mean, we really did. I felt like we really did great analysis and had, great different perspectives and experiences. And I feel like people did really chip in. And I don't know, it's just hard because I don't, I don't want to be the one that screws it up for everybody. So, and I just always worry about that.
I'm gonna bow out here, but Dave, what a great show. Thank you, John, for such a great show.
George, looks like you got yourself a McDuff haircut.
Do it. A McDuff haircut.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Good.
Okay.
It's a great.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Good night.